It's Verity here at my YouTube channel and blog Pretty Little Button, where I make paper crafting tutorials for the everyday crafter. Today I'm going to show you 3 cards where I have created galaxy backgrounds using heat embossing. I'm going to share what powders I mix for each card to create some really fun and interesting backgrounds. It's a great way to layer up your embossing powders and create so many different blends. So let's get started. So for this first card, I am using the Black Magic embossing powder. So this is a colour blend, and this contains a variety of different colour embossing powders, but also different size embossing powder particles as well, which creates really fun effects when you come to melt it. So I've got a piece of white card here, and I'm just smooshing my Wow embossing powder clear ultra slow drying embossing powder down onto the card just to transfer ink. Once I've covered the whole card panel with that ink, I'm then covering it with the Black Magic embossing powder. Now this will contain quite a lot of black fine embossing powders, but also some larger, chunkier embossing powders of sort of silver, gold and white. Because of these thicker and more chunkier embossing powder particles, it's always best to heat set these powders from underneath the card panel. This ensures that you start to melt the powder and trap it, whereas if you did it on the front, you're more likely to blow those bigger particles off of the paper before they've had a chance to melt, as they may not have adhered down to the sticky ink as well as the finer particles. So as you can see, I've melted this and I'm getting a beautiful sort of speckled embossing with some of the silver and the gold particles against this beautiful black shiny background. Now I also just added some more ink and some more powder to the areas where I hadn't quite got my ink and powder on the cardstock, just to complete it. And I've decided I wanted to dull down a little bit of that silver and gold embossing because it's quite bright and vibrant for this embossed background for a galaxy. And so I added some ink over the embossed background again, just smushing my ink pad down. And then I'm using the primary ebony embossing powder from Wow. I'm just sprinkling this over. So this will just add some black embossing powder. And it has a translucency, so it will not completely cover up all that silver, but it will dull it down a little bit. And this just changed the pattern a little bit more for me, so I didn't have massive patches of gold or silver all over the background. So this is one way to create an embossed galaxy background because of the colour blend of Black Magic and the beautiful silver and gold tones it has. For the second technique, we are going to layer up quite a few different embossing powders. Some of these are opaque, some of these have got opaque marbling techniques, and some of them are some more translucent colours as well. So I've smushed down my ink onto my card panel again, and the first colour I'm going over is just primary ebony embossing powder. So again, this is that translucent black embossing powder, and I'm just covering my panel and covering it with the primary ebony embossing powder. Now my ink pad was a little bit dry, I could have done with re-inking it. So as you can see, as the powder goes on, it's not a completely full coverage. But it's okay because I'm going to layer some of the colours up, so I don't need it to be a completely perfect black background. And as I said, with this powder, because it's much more finer compared to the colour blends, I can heat set this from the front. Now, for the first colour I'm going to layer, I'm going to use Bang, and this is an opaque marbling embossing powder, and like the Black Magic, has a variety of different size embossing particles in there, so some lovely fine particles as well as some more chunky particles. To add this on, I'm not going to use my ink pad. I want to use this as more of a speckled look to the card. And I'm using a metal spatula to add some of the powder and sprinkle it over the top. It's important you use a metal spatula because if you use a plastic one, you are introducing static back into the powder and back into that pot that Wow embossing powder I've worked so hard to remove. Because there's no ink for this powder to attach to, it's really important with this method of heat setting from underneath. This will prevent the powder blowing off the card before it's had a chance to actually melt into your background. Now, although this is opaque marbling, the turquoise within the Bang embossing mix has a sort of translucency. Now, I find that you will want to layer this up over the areas where you'll see more white spots. This mix also has some silver and white particles which are more thick and create that marbling look. Now I'm also adding another powder on over the top. This is Genteel. So again, this is another opaque marbling embossing powder, and this has sort of a black embossing powder for the base, and then it's mixed with some silver, some grey and some glitter and some white particles. Again, this is another kind of colour blend, so it's got a variety of different size embossing particles, so you'll need to heat set this from underneath. What I love about adding this powder to this background is the silver glitter that adds. It really starts to make this background feel like a galaxy night sky. As I've got some more lighter areas now to that background, I'm going back in and layering some of the bang back over the top. And where the bang turquoise overlies some of the white embossing particles, you'll get that just that hint of that turquoise. And you've got to think about it, when you look up a galaxy sky, it doesn't have like a full bright patch of turquoise and a patch of pink and a patch of yellow. They're kind of just very translucent over the top, so these powders work really well with this. So I wanted to add in a few more extra colours, so I added some primary lemon, and again where this overlaps some of the more paler embossing powders, you get that hint of yellow which you see in a galaxy background. For the last colour, to add a bit more variation, I'm just going in with Primary Fuchsia Fusion. So this is a lovely bright pink, very fuchsia pink. And again, I'm just using the same method with my metal spatula, sprinkling some of the powder over, concentrating it a little bit more where there are some white particles, so you'll get that pink shining through. And then again, I'm heat setting from underneath. And as you can see now, this has created a really, really interesting background, a really different galaxy background from the first one. So for this last background, I'm going to be layering up some of the new embossing powders with that I've done with Alexandra Renke as the base for the card. So for this first colour, I'm using Kirsten's Magic. This has a beautiful purple base, and then it's got the white particles that are slightly larger that create those splotches of white across the background. So again, because of this colour blend and difference in powder particles, it's really important that you try and heat set it from underneath. You'll get a better consistency and you're not going to lose those white embossing particles when you heat set them. So this is creating a very purple background at the moment, and obviously we don't really see in galaxy backgrounds with a full purple background such as this. So I'm going to layer up another embossing powder over the top. So this one, I hope I pronounce it correctly, is Chechny's Sky, and this has a very dark blue colour. It's almost like a very dark teal blue colour with, again, white spots. Now these are both translucent marbling powders, so the blue and the purple are translucent. This means that when you layer them over the top, it will also allow some of the colour underneath to shine through. So you get this beautiful sort of dark, navy kind of purple as these two teal and purples translucent powders mix. And then of course you get the lovely white spots of the marbling effect coming through. I'm just going to show you a piece of the Chechny's Sky heat embossed on a piece of white card without any other colour underneath. And there is some difference because you can still see some of that purple shine from Kirsten's Magic coming through underneath the Chechny's Sky. And I think it's really, really an interesting colour blend. So I'm also then going in with some Oceanic embossing powder. This is an opaque marbling embossing powder again, so this will show through. It lies over the top of the Chechny's Sky really well, blends really well, but you still get that sort of slightly lighter, paler teal coming through. What I found also is when I then heat set from the front using my heat gun, if I placed it over where the white particles are, I could get that more marbling effect by moving the embossing powder as it's heated up. And this really added some movement to the sky and to the galaxy, as though these are kind of sort of another galaxy far, far away. And I really loved that movement, so I created a few different areas across the card panel just to add a little bit more interest and make it look a little bit more like a true galaxy sky. The last embossing powder I'm putting on this guy is Galaxy Glow. So this has a real interesting texture to it. Again, it's got a variety of different size particles, it's got some softer colours, bit of glitter, and as its name starts, glow. So if it is in the dark, having been in the sun, later on at night it will show as galaxy, sort of glow in the dark. But this added just a touch of glitter and sparkle to that galaxy background, just to add a little bit more interest. So here's a side-by-side look at all three backgrounds, and as you can see, experimenting with the different embossing powders can add real interest and create three different really interesting and unique embossed galaxy backgrounds. So to turn these into cards, for the second background, I used some circles dies just to die cut out from that panel, different sizes to create some interest. And I wanted to create this as though it's a little bit of a window into this galaxy. I was using the circles to kind of mimic planets that you expect with a galaxy background. And I'm going to layer these up with dimension just to add a little bit of interest. Obviously with this background you can be really selective as to where you put your dies to ensure you get the colours and the motion in the background as you want. For the third background, I decided just to use one of my Waffle Flower layering rectangle dies just to die cut out a panel as though you're creating a simple window on this card into the galaxy background. I just picked one that gave me a nice matte area around on the white card base to just frame that background. And what I found was, again, because I wasn't using the whole background, I could position the die over the area of the panel that I felt gave the best look to the galaxy background. And for this last one, I decided I wanted to trim it in half at a diagonal, just a little bit more interest, and then foam mount this onto a card panel. Now trimming it in half means I could use both halves and create a second card from that other panel, which is really, really good if you want to stretch your card making supplies. So I have it round free to make another card in the future. So to finish all of these cards off, I added a selection of white die cuts for the sentiments, the watercolour brush Hello from Altenew, the Handsome from PinkFresh Studios Phrase Builder set Hello, and then Catherine Pooler's Miss You. I liked how the white really contrasted against the dark tones in these embossed backgrounds, and then I also added a few sentiments just stamped in black ink on a little white card strip to finish off all the sentiments. To finish off the cards completely, I also used a few Tonic Nouveau Studios Chalkstick Nouveau Vintage drops just to add some white contrast again, but also it helps sort of tie in with that sort of star appearance to those cards. I hope today has really shown you that you can experiment with your embossing powders, create really unique mixes and create really unique backgrounds. I had so much fun creating these galaxy backgrounds, and I can't really choose my favourite, whether it's the Miss You or the Hello card. So I'd love to know which is your favourite out of these three, and just let me know in the comments down below. You'll find a list of links used in today's video in the description box below, as well as over on the blog. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and why not subscribe to the channel? Hit that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up as well. To check out my own personal channel, Pretty Little Button, I've included a link here as well as down below. For 10% discount at the Wow Embossing Powder shop, just use the code you can see on screen. Until next time, happy crafting!